back. 2. And so I'm going to walk through the answer, pointing out key points that I think that you might have had, I'm guessing that you might have had trouble with. First of all, you need to define that P is equal to the true proportion of non-conforming products. This is a one sample z-test for P, or proportions. They didn't give you an alpha level, so use 0.05. It's good at the beginning when you're doing these test of hypothesis problems to write it in English so you understand what you're talking about and what your null hypothesis is and what your alternate hypothesis is. So our null hypothesis is that P is equal to 0.11, which means the company claims that 11% of the products fail to conform to standard. The company made some changes, okay? And so they're hoping that this has improved, and now that the true proportion is less than 11% due to the modifications. The conditions. This was a random sample was stated. Here, the independent condition, because it's somewhat questionable whether the size of this company, it did say it was an industrial process. So we must assume that each trial run must have more than 3,000 items to meet the 10% condition. Okay, since this is a test of hypothesis, we're going to be using for our P the null hypothesis, 0.11. So these are the 33 are the number of successes, which is greater than 10. 267 is the number of failures, which is greater than 10. So all of our conditions have been met. All right. So now, this is the part where if you are rushing, then you can take some shortcuts. And if you have time, you can do it the long way. But you need to know how to do it the long way because you're going to get multiple choice questions. And so you want to be prepared for those. So we had a sample of 300. Our p hat was 0.053. So this graph is under the null hypothesis. So our p naught, right, is equal to 0.11. And this is a left tail test, so we shade this area, and that is going to be our p value. And the p-value is going to be based on our evidence, and our evidence is p hat is equal to 0.053. Now this is the formula, and the easiest way to remember this is basically a z-score, and we want to know how far this p hat is from the null hypothesis. So when we're doing this, okay, you don't have to write the formula, but as you're going through and doing these problems, it's good that you write the formula so you can remember it. And I don't know if you can see this, but this is p naught 1 minus p naught divided by n, and the whole thing is you take the square root of it. All right. So we fill this in. Our p hat is 0.053 minus p naught, which is 0.11, divided by 0.11 times 0.89 divided by 300. And you'd use your calculator and you would get negative 3.16. And you should be saying to yourself, this is going to have a very small area because I'm 3 standard deviations away from the mean. So here you have z equals negative 3.16. Okay, to calculate the p-value is equal to the probability that z is less than negative 3.16. So just as a review, to find that, you're going to go to normal CDF. Normal CDF. Okay, now my lower bound is a very small number. I can use negative infinity. And it's going to go to negative 3.16. It's a standardized score. Hit paste. All right, now notice that this is not 7%. This is exponential notation. So my p-value is 0.00079. Okay, because that was an exponential notation. And then I always put it over here. This is essentially 0. So when I would put this, so this is approximately 0. So this is the work that, if you had time, would be great to do. If you didn't have time, then you should go to your calculator and know which test to do. So you're going to go to Stat, Tests, one proportion z-test. Our null hypothesis is 0.11. We had our p-hat, the number of successes is 16 out of 300. Okay. Now this is a left tail test, so I have to change this to a left tail test. I hit calculate. All right. And something went wrong here. So let's go back. Stat, tests, one proportion z-test. Okay, my n that I put in was accidentally 30. It's 300. Hit calculate. All right. And so my z is equal to negative 3.14. That's required. And this is my p-value. My p-value is equal to 0.00085. Now I knew that that number that I had gotten before was wrong because it was 7, and I know that my z-score has to be negative, so 7 was an impossible number for it to be. So it's good to start thinking about these are z-scores and what is a reasonable number. Now, this is the definition that I said that you're going to have to work on memorizing. The meaning of the p-value. Okay. Assuming the true proportion of non-conforming items is 11%, there is only essentially a 0 probability of getting a sample proportion as far away from 0.56 or further purely by chance. So the final step is your conclusion. And this is important that you get all of these parts. So, since the p-value which is approximately 0, you could do something as simple as that, is less than alpha equals 0.05, we reject the null hypothesis H0. We have convincing evidence that the true proportion of non-conforming items is less than 0.11. Okay, which must make the company very happy because the modifications that they made worked. My advice to you is when you're writing these, don't put extra information. Key is to answer the question and don't give more information because then you might be penalized for that. Have a good evening and hopefully we'll see you soon.